I now have the pleasure of introducing Michael Flemming, who is CEO and co-founder of TORC Robotics. He's a self-described idealist entrepreneur obsessed with self-driving solutions. Michael left a faculty position at Virginia Tech, go Hokies, to launch his company in 2005. He has assembled a world-class team of innovators that have produced a self-driving car called Asimov that's on the leading edge of autonomous vehicle technology. Michael has taken Asimov all over the country to test it in real-world driving conditions and show what it can do. In fact, his self-driving car was on the road in Vegas, giving rides at the Consumer Electronics Show. He's here today to share his experiences and passion, and soon you'll see his enthusiasm is contagious. Michael?
Any Hokies in the room? Okay, a couple. That's good. Good to hear. So let me plug this guy in. So I think of the speakers here. I think I've classified myself as the super nerd of the group. So we're going to talk a little bit about technology, capabilities. Someone made the comment earlier on that the industry is trying to figure out what's reality and what's hype. So in preparing for this presentation, I reflected back on me being in middle school. And I got in an Astro van with one of my best friends in middle school, Josh. And his dad and his uncle were in the Astro, actually two uncles and his dad was in the Astro minivan. We drove to a football game, and it was pouring rain, and it was dark outside. He's driving along. Josh and I shared a seatbelt because we were, out of seatbelts, but we wanted to be safe. And all of a sudden, the Astro van started hydroplaning, and we started fishtailing. Then the van rolled over several times, and Josh and I were sitting there hanging upside down with our seatbelts. So the first thing that ran through my mind as a child and a boy was, I got to get out of this van because it's going to blow up. Because I've seen all of these action movies, and that's what happens when an accident takes place. So I needed to get out pretty quickly. I should have talked to Josh about me releasing the seatbelt, but I didn't. Hit the seatbelt, and we ran out the back, both anticipating the car going kaboom. Of course, it never went kaboom. So, now I go back and I look at self-driving cars, and I think we are also mindful of the movies that we've watched, and the Terminator and all these awful things happening. But, in reality, we have the Tesla vehicle that ran into the back of a fire truck, and look at how much press that incident received. And what about the other 1.3 million traffic accidents throughout the world? So I think it's important that we don't fall victim to sensationalism with self-driving cars. The other thing, and I'll try to stay on topic here, I really struggle at that in general, but, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't fumble. I guess the title is Level 5, the Holy Grail of Autonomy. So, as a true engineer, I went and I said, well, what's the definition of Level 5? And let me read it to you, because oftentimes the first question requires another question that leads to another question. So it basically says, self-driving technology should, under all road and environmental conditions, that can be managed by a human driver. Okay, let me focus on managed by a human driver. What human driver? Okay, 95% of accidents are due to human error. So there are some pretty bad human drivers out there. And if I were to poll the audience, what we found is, if I were to say, are you a better driver than most folks? And just about everyone raises their hand and say, yeah, I'm a much better driver than everyone else. So I think that's the part that I struggle with this definition. Would Josh's uncle, would he fall into the category of a human driver here? Because clearly he should have driven slower so we didn't hydroplane. So I want to share a couple experiences from CES. If you could put the present. Okay. I said I was a super nerd, but I struggle. Here we go. Fantastic. So let me share some of the things that we encountered at CES. This is our self-driving vehicle Asimov. So just for clarity, This vehicle controls the steering wheel, the brake, the throttle, the turn signals. It decides which lanes to get into, which routes to take. It gives way to pedestrians and so forth. So we're driving through the streets of Las Vegas. We autonomously perform a U-turn here. And we're driving down the street, and oh my gosh, this truck is going the wrong way down a one-way street. Human driver error. So what do you do in these situations? And we posted this. And it was interesting to see the comments that came to us. You should do this, you should do that. But you see the car that just passed us? Asimov did the exact same thing the car did. But a lot of the posts said you should do this, you should do that. So what is the most appropriate action in that situation? And I don't think there's consensus in society, because one person here may say you should do X, and this person here should say you should do Y. I think that's one of the biggest challenges we within the self-driving industry face. So we have other things that we look at. You may have pedestrians, and we're very conservative when it comes to pedestrians, but you're going to see we're very aggressive when it comes to other vehicles. Because if you drive in a conservative fashion, other cars are just going to constantly cut in front of you, and you're not going to get to your destination in a timely fashion. But when it comes to pedestrians, cyclists, we want to have a very conservative and safe barrier. Here's an incident of a Kia cutting us off. It wasn't really a super aggressive cutoff. But what's interesting in this video is he changes lanes, and you're going to see the window rolled down. And the guy turns to us and goes, "Hey, is that really a self-driving car?" We said, "Sure." He goes, "I intentionally cut you off because I wanted to see what you would do." You also have drivers who will cut in front of you quickly because they forget where they're going. Other scenarios we have to account for, sometimes roads are closed. Maps aren't updated. We have to be able to detect those construction zones and not drive through the construction zones. We have other scenarios here where the light may turn yellow and you want to go through it. Light may turn yellow and you may want to stop abruptly. And what are the different things that we take into account, us as a human driver? You have other incidences where cars will run red lights and you want to stop here. It's amazing how many vehicles ran traffic lights during our Las Vegas testing. Sometimes you're driving down a lane and there are some cones within your lane. Now you won't want to perform a lane change here, but we call it a lane shifting behavior, where you'll just go on one side of the lane as opposed to the other. And these are just a handful of the 1,000 corner cases that we've identified. So we started this journey about 10 years ago, partnering with Virginia Tech and the DARPA Urban Challenge. Granted, this is a decade ago where the term self-driving was hardly ever used. There's no one inside this vehicle. There are no SAE levels of self-driving at this point in time. And a lot of folks would say, hey, we solved the self-driving problem. But in this competition, it was very structured. There were trained professional drivers that obeyed the rules of the road. And except for one self-driving truck that drove into a building, I believe the first self-driving on self-driving collision in history, pretty much the vehicles behaved. So after the Urban Challenge, Google hired a lot of the folks from the first and second place team. We were able to keep our folks intact, and we commercialized this technology within the Defense Department. At that time, IED fatalities were incredibly high. There was a need to remove the warfighter from harm's way. But if you think about it, the risk tolerance in war is really high. So the adoption rate was pretty quick here. In mining, we've commercialized this technology with Caterpillar. It's a little bit of an easier problem in mine sites simply because they're confined. You don't allow the public in. In order to get into a mine site, you have to be trained. You have to wear PPE. So I wanted to share one other incident here, and I want to leave you with the question. A self-driving vehicle in front of another self-driving vehicle. If you're this white truck, is this a safe action? And it's interesting. It's almost like the bigger the car, and especially buses, they're just going to jump in front of you. They think they have right-of-way. So I don't know what this guy was thinking jumping between two self-driving cars. But those are the things that we've got to account for. So I'll leave you with a couple thoughts, and I can't believe I'm on time here. As we've driven from Washington, D.C. to Seattle, back to Richmond, our months of testing at CES in Las Vegas, we recently announced a partnership with AAA, where we can start looking at these cases and start having the conversation is, what's the appropriate action? Because oftentimes we'll ask the wrong question. And the wrong question is, what's the safest thing to do? And the answer to that question is to stay at home. Some of us want to go on casual drives, and we'll take our time. We'll let other cars in front of us. Some of us, we need to get to our meeting on time, and we may be much more aggressive. We may not let other cars cut in front of us. So as we work with OEMs, Tier 1s and Tier 2s, one of the things that we're thinking about is the last 100 years, cars have been designed around the driver. As we develop self-driving technology, does the passenger control that knob between driving conservatively, aggressively, getting there in a timely fashion? We don't know what the answer is. But what we found in giving a lot of rides at CES, some customers loved that we were aggressive. Some did not. So how do we account for that difference? Thank you.